Galway and leader of the Greens in the Senate. Additionally, I sit on the Climate Action Joint Oireachtas Committee. Where we are all agreed is that congestion in Galway is choking the city and cannot continue. It's ruining livelihoods and the quality of life for tens of thousands. If I believed that the bypass would address that, I would be honest about it, even though I have other environmental concerns, which I'll get to. But I don't believe it will solve congestion based on the application before us, and I'm going to outline why that is. Communities in Galway have been awaiting a solution to congestion for decades, as my colleagues have outlined, and in large part, the bypass has been used as a political football. We don't have the public transport we need, and that has been used as an excuse to build the road or as a platform to complain about the lack of action. Frankly, we need to get down to the job of building the real solutions. And hand on heart, I do not believe that the bypass is the silver bullet that will provide this. In fact, it is only projected based on the estimates of the applicant itself to shift an extra 5% of people onto public transport on top of the other measures in the Galway transport strategy. Therefore, heavy lifting is being achieved by the public transport element of the plan. The implications of this small impact, and I'm going to show how we can get even further without the bypass, are huge. The road will change the very fabric of our county. As I will discuss, the county will be more and more built up and destroy our rural life with, I believe, a lack of transport over time. Concerns over flood management, an impact on wildlife and the costs of maintaining the road have been brought to light during the oral hearing, and I don't believe that these concerns have been fully addressed. It is people, constituents in the area surrounding the road that will be impacted. I will be listening intently over the coming weeks to hear the response from the applicant. But perhaps the main issue to be addressed by this oral hearing is the long-term effects on urban and rural planning, both for our well-being and for climate action. Because if a bypass is built, it will have a major impact on where new homes are built. As soon as we have that bypass, homes, housing estates will start to appear on the far side of that road. And those people will be almost entirely dependent on their cars. We have a current problem, which is congestion in the city. But we need to see a solution that is not going to exacerbate the problem by inducing traffic in the county rather than removing traffic. This entire application is based on what I believe is an outdated model of traffic management, predict and supply, which has been shown particularly in the States to create road users rather than remove road users. Transport first planning is where you put in place the transport first before centres of population grow. I don't believe it was properly examined by the National Planning Framework, despite all of the mentions of sustainability in the framework. But be that as it may, it is a fact that this oral hearing must consider. Where transport infrastructure exists, housing, retail, industry will appear, and they will be dependent on that form of transport that's been put in place. We only have to look at history to know that this is true. Where there is a rail line, homes are built. Where there is light rail, homes are built. Where there is a massive over-engineered bypass, homes will be built. And that's not good news for Galway if we take the last of those three options. It means sprawl, which is entirely against all planning principles. From that point on, the people living in those homes will be entirely dependent on that form of transport until more transport is found. Will another road be needed on the far side when the sprawl moves further and further from the city? Will we lose our density as a city instead of building it up? I believe that is absolutely, certainly the route we are going to take. What we should be focused on are the communities that are already car dependent in rural Galway and really commit to them. Bring back post offices, build community centres and schools. That's real sustainability, where we can stay in our communities as much as possible. And it's already happening to an extent. On top of investment announced this month, we can see that more and more people are working from home. We need bus shelters in Spiddal, in Barna and across the county. Even without them, I see people standing in the rain waiting for a bus. We need to ensure that EV charging points are in place, that road upgrades take place, and that we don't see budgets dropping for road maintenance. But crucially, And this is the matter for this oral hearing. Even without all of these things, which I'm committed to resolving, the majority of the traffic is in the city. So for people living in the county, putting in place public transport and a proper cycle infrastructure in the city is the best way to ensure that roads are cleared to allow them to pass through the city freely. What we've seen up to date is that nothing has been done to clear people from the roads. Only 9% of people projected to use buses. Cycling, in fact, 60,000 people in Galway live within a 20-minute cycle of Eyre Square. And the Galway Transport Strategy is predicting a measly 6% of cycling. 60,000 people out of a total of 80,000 people. We need a real modal shift. It is clear from the data that only 3% of traffic passes from outside the city on one side to outside the city on the other side. The vast majority is contained inside the city boundaries. Some may say that traffic will also be dealt with by the bypass, but actually only 35% even crosses the river. And even if your journey will bring you across the river, many people will not want to use the bypass. Why? Because to travel from Salthill to Renmore will be 22 kilometres with this new road compared to 5.5 kilometres along the current route. It will not be the silver bullet. The time-dependent nature of the congestion has not been examined fully in this application. What we have here is a problem that is a rush hour problem created primarily by city traffic, but felt most acutely by those living in the county. The solution, however, of this bypass is based on the county and not the city. That can't work. The solution must be fixed in the city to free up the road space for those coming in from places where there are no buses. A bypass is a sledgehammer to crack this nut. And frankly, it's not a huge ask. We know that the majority of traffic takes place during rush hour and that when school and college is off, this completely dissipates. We are now seeing more and more funding coming to Galway to upgrade Camp Station, to build greenways, to build pedestrian and cycleway across from the university to Wood Quay on the old Clifton railway line, which would ultimately join up with the Connemara Greenway. I want to see double tracking from Athenry to Galway to see more carriages for more and more, proper school transport, bus connects going across the city, and maybe even light rail in the future. That is a modern city. None of that is dependent on a road estimated to take only an additional 5% off the road. In fact, that extra 5% doesn't even take into account most of those additional projects that are now in the pipeline. Modern businesses looking to invest in Galway are not interested in a road that predominantly increases traffic on arterial routes into the city. All of those roads will see concentrated traffic, and in fact we are already seeing that there's a lack of building going on inside the footprint of the city because of these access routes which are expected to access onto bypass. We need to prioritise density in the city, public realm spaces, pedestrianisation and not sprawl. The applicant's own data shows increased traffic on arterial routes into the city, including Headford Road, Tuam Road, Bohermore, Old Dublin Road, Moycullen Road, Letter Road, Rathoon Road, where one of the largest primary schools will collide with the traffic. That's the Wellskull Gowley. It also shows increases in traffic volumes on minor roads in Salthill, Shantlin, Newcastle, Menlo, Merview. The Heathrow Airport was deemed illegal because of the obligations under the Paris Climate Accord. Over a year ago, as a councillor in the city, I put forward a motion on the agenda to call a climate and biodiversity emergency in Galway. It was resisted based, I was told, on the potential to impact on the delivery of the ring road. The delivery of the ring road is not impacted by the city recognising its obligations, but by the very fact that the obligations already exist. I'm a member of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Climate Action. This afternoon, we meet to plan our pre-legislative scrutiny of the Climate Action Bill, which will commit Ireland in law to zero carbon emissions by 2050, which will put in place 5 yearly carbon budgets to achieve this. It's hugely ambitious, it's hugely exciting, but it will not be an easy target to reach. And when we look at the fact that transport is 20% of our emissions are through transport, we have to look at whether the bypass is the right use of money and whether it will actually reduce our emissions. And by the applicant's own admission, the emissions will increase by 37%. That's the prediction. As a matter of conscience, for our children's children, we cannot leave legacies that fly in the face of these commitments. ultimately it will make all of our lives better, as will real investment in healthy, active and public transport for Galway, along with investment in our rural communities. I know that the majority of those advocating for a road were doing so at a time where where there was no European funding coming for infrastructure that reduces our carbon footprint. Times have changed, and if we want to see real investment, we have to look to the future. The nature of our economy is changing. High-speed rail to Dublin, the Western Rail Corridor, bus connects, cycleways, school buses, working hubs, broadband. We need to green the city. That's the future that will bring European funding and business and will protect future generations. Thank you.